example to lead into my next question. I'll ask Sophia, what role are you seeing authenticity play in storytelling?
This actually was just gonna talk about when Goose was talking about Bob Dylan. I think it's interesting because especially talking about legacy artists like Bob Dylan, I think it's almost more difficult, like you said, to have authenticity transcend time, because something that was authentic to him when he was coming up is, like you said, the TikTok was a hit, because of course it made it seem like, well, he's always coming in at the last minute, so here we go. Or even for Britney, the Discord stuff, like the Twitch, yeah. And I think staying true to the artist, I think that's why it's also important to have really good artists and like team relationships. And I feel like for my team, I work with a lot of younger artists. They're real quick to clock me when something's not gonna work. They're real quick to tell me like that's not cool. I'm like, okay, whatever. But I think it's really important to stick to their brand, the audience that they're trying to appeal to, the audience that they had, and the audience that you're trying to reel in. Again, is someone gonna listen to an entire catalog? Maybe not, but how do you get them to bring in, new listeners to those 3 new songs, those 2 new songs, and kind of also get them to stay? I think a short-term idea oftentimes actually locks in long-term fans, and it's kind of what you're doing for that short-term activation idea strategy that's actually going to impact you in the long run.
Moving right along, I'm curious what are the most effective direct-to-consumer channels right now, in your opinion? You could pass this off to Christian and Rebecca to start, but socials, emails, SMS, and why do you believe that they're so effective? Christian, would you like to jump in on that?
Sure. Well, in the case of Sleep Token, we've ran some really successful digital advertising campaigns. So, to be completely transparent, we have only spent $47K in ads for phase 1 and phase 2 for vinyl, and we've made over $1 million in revenue. And a lot of it has to do with really compelling creative and making sure that the audience targeting is on point. So that's another nod back to our fan sifter and audience database, and again, understanding the proper audience to target.
Let me also ask you specifically, what's your take on the role of influencers in music marketing, Christian?
Okay, so I think we can all agree that the power of influence is real. Look at who runs our fucking country right now. Look at the Taylor Swifts and the Kim Kardashians of the world. Look at the impact that their audience has been able to make. You ask them to jump, they ask how high. I think that right now, the impressionable young audience on short form, I think people just want to be a part of something, right? So I think the lower barrier to entry in being a part of something is looking at trends on short form and leaning in. And I think that's why a lot of kids are lip syncing to certain songs, or they're seeing certain trends or narratives on short form and leaning into those and doing things themselves. And going back to what Rebecca was saying, where virality is something that happens, not something that we do, that is very much true, and at the same time, you can hit the jackpot or hit the lottery and win by maybe jump-starting a campaign on your own, whether it be having certain influencers use a specific sound and doing something with that sound, creating a narrative on your own, maybe boosting it and reaching newer audiences. And sometimes you can wake up the next day and you got lucky and you reached a shit ton of people's algorithms with that narrative. So let me give you guys an example. For Sleep Token, our A&R Daniel came to us and asked, how do we hit people's algorithms again, like we did prior to album release and leading up to it, while anchoring around this tour that is happening right now. So what we decided was to individually reach out to a bunch of TikTok baddies and have them use a specific sound off of the album and have them show what they plan to wear to the tour. And so about a dozen have gotten back to us. They posted a TikTok using the song Provider and showing their thirst trap outfits that they plan to wear to the tour. We boosted that with a bunch of TikTok credits, and we managed to double our UGC in a matter of a week. So, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Again, it's trial and error, but we're really proud about that.
Rebecca, I would love to hear your thoughts too on balancing personalization with scale and direct-to-consumer marketing.
Yeah, I think that's something which is really important, because we all obviously want to be able to scale something. We want fan bases to get much bigger, but as we've already talked about, we know that being authentic is really, really key to that, and sometimes that's really, really hard to scale as you get bigger. I think that something which we use, and I've used on campaigns, is kind of returning to touch points and making sure that you still prioritize kind of the core fans, segmentation, everything that's there. Going back to challenges for a second, just because that's somewhere where we were able to kind of keep the campaign rolling for a long time, something that did scale, but something that we wanted to make sure still stayed personalised to the core fans who've been there at the beginning, was kind of creating exclusive moments. So we created a kind of microsite where fans could sign up to it through an email address. Then they would only get exclusive drops there. They would get them hours ahead of the general public. And it meant that we could specifically kind of message and target the people we knew had been there all along. And even though we knew that the campaign was much bigger, it had scaled, the fan base had grown larger, we were getting higher reach and higher engagement across our posts, we were still making sure to deliver something to those core fans who'd been there kind of all along. And I think doing that kind of micro-targeting, creating something that is kind of still rewarding the people who've been there all along, even though you're still giving something to the wider fan base as well, is really, really key. Kind of harking back to nostalgia, kind of inside jokes from earlier in the campaign, bringing in fan lore, things like that, where you're kind of maintaining this community throughout, but you're still kind of reminding people why they're there, maintaining this kind of personalization, this authenticity throughout, and kind of not getting too big that you're forgetting all of the fans who kind of helped that grow.
Olivia, I'd love to hear from you your process for identifying the core story in a campaign. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Identifying the core story, asking them. I know that sounds so dumb, but sometimes literally what we'll do is we'll get on a call with an artist and we'll go through everything. I'll be like, tell me how you feel, talk about why you wrote this. Some stuff I believe in is I'll be like, what colour is this song? And they go, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, bear with me. Because you can find out from that what the mood and tone of it is without them actually having to tell you the words.
Right.
So they can tell you a colour more than they'll tell you how they really feel. So there's stuff like that we can use all the time. But again, it's about sitting down, it's about asking. And I also think sitting in a room with somebody is really important. The one thing that we always do to get to the core story is say, what do you hate? Because it's so much easier to rule out what people hate quickly than just focus on stuff that they've heard about or their mates might do. Because that's not going to help your campaign. But if you know anecdotally already that they hate how, I don't know, Ed Sheeran does something, they love how Dua Lipa does something, you've got a peer that you can then lean to in Dua, and you know to avoid anything Ed. No disrespect to you love them, obviously, just picking two that hint. But that kind of stuff's important. And then the other thing that I really like to ask to get to the core story, and this is stealing from someone else, so I will admit it, it's stealing from Victoria Beckham. So, essentially there was a while ago when she first was in the Spice Girls, she was interviewed by, I can't remember what magazine, but they were like, what do you want to be as big as one day? And she said she wanted to be as big as Persil deodorant, which is essentially Tide, right? So she wanted to be as big as Tide. And what that tells you about that person is that she saw herself becoming a global brand. So, if someone comes to you and they say something like that, it doesn't always have to be about music, it doesn't have to be about space. So I always say, where do you want to be? And don't pick a musician that you like. Don't pick someone you think you can be. Pick someone big. So go for something dumb. I was like, pick Beyonce. Don't be afraid to pick Beyonce. Crack on. So that's the kind of stuff, basically. It's goading them into doing that stuff. And giving them the opportunity to tell the truth in a very non-judgmental way. And I think also in terms of non-judgment, the room has to be safe. The people in it have to be safe. The call you're on has to be safe. They have to know that that's the purpose of the call as well. And you have to know when to stop as well if someone's not liking it or it goes too far. But that strategy is what we use when we're on board with artists, when we get the opportunity to speak with them. And it's the most effective thing, I think, is that you just ask them directly what they want to do.
Sophia, particularly with storytelling in mind, how do you approach launching a new artist in a crowded digital space?
Yeah, so I think, again, working with a lot of younger artists, there's not too much data to work with, right? And I think, going off of what Olivia was saying, conversations. Talking to them about what they like, what they don't like, what they want to see, what do they see themselves doing in the long term, because I think as marketers or as teams sometimes in creativity, we have a lot of pride, right? We think our ideas are great and what we say is going to work and everything like that. But again, it takes one 19-year-old artist to tell you no. And I think that that's really important to keep in mind because you are world building, right? Like I feel like that's a word that's been thrown around a lot recently. But sometimes the world that you foresee for an artist is not the world that they see themselves in. And I think that's really important in trying to create something for new artists that are just stepping out to the scene. You can use comparable artists a lot, and then sometimes they want to do something that's completely out of the box, never been done before, and that's where you're kind of like trying to wrap your brain around, how do I do something that I know is going to work on top of something that they want to do, which might be something that you're doing for the first time altogether. And I think a lot of times it ends up working out in the best way, right? Because you're using everyone's ideas in tandem, and you're still getting them what they want, even as a new artist.
So unbelievably, as we head towards the close of the conversation, I did want to ask each of our wonderful panelists, maybe starting with Goose, what the labels can learn from each other's approaches to digital marketing.
A lot. A lot. I think, we all do things differently, but I really think sharing our ideas and our learnings is key. I think we do a good job of it, speaking from experience, but I think there's stuff that we can do better, particularly when it also comes to, we're all so busy, right? And that's kind of a constant, but I also think finding the time to do competitor analysis as well and see what competitors are getting up to is really important. I often try to also have conversations and connect with, other digital people around the business. I was speaking to my colleague Jose, who's Frontline Digital Latam last week, and he was talking about their creative strategy and how that marries up with their paid strategy. It's very different how we approach things in catalog. And on the flip side, same conversation, I was telling him about some of our email strategy and some of the success we've seen lately with driving conversions. So I just think these conversations need to happen because they're so important and we can learn a lot from each other.
Olivia, how about for you?
I think it's about sharing work, and I actually think that this is a wider industry thing as well. And again, to reference something completely not relevant to this, there was a study done about the intelligence of children who cover their homework versus don't cover their homework. The kids who cover their homework have the lower IQs than the kids who share their answers. And I think that is a really good lesson. It's why we do a lot of development, it's why I'm coming to do this. I want to share the answers. Because the better that we all are at doing this, the better we serve our artists, and the better music gets out there. Because that's literally the job that we came here to do. We're fans of this music. So if we share our information and uncover our answers a little bit, then we're in a really, really strong position.
Really, how about you, Sophia?
I think, going off of what I was saying before, it's really good to look at what everybody else is doing, because sometimes when you're trying to do the next big thing, you also see that you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. And maybe other simpler ideas or more ideas that are right in front of you are actually going to work better than a whole, worked out idea with all these moving parts. So I think that's something that we can definitely learn from other labels as well.
Rebecca, how about for you? What can the labels learn from one another's approaches to digital marketing?
I think an awful lot as well. I think not just in terms of ideas that they've innovated or anything like that, but from the fan perspective, I don't think fans necessarily understand the difference between different labels. They don't care which artists are signed where. They just tend to love music. So if they see one artist doing something really, really cool, they're going to expect it from the other people that they're fans of. and they tend to kind of, like artists as a group or as a genre. So if there's anything that we can do as the label which kind of brings those fandoms together in terms of the ideas that we're using, or looking outside and kind of increasing our learnings by seeing what similar artists in the same genre who might be on other labels or those campaigns are doing, I think it can only be beneficial.
And Christian, for you?
A couple things. I think when working in a collaborative space, it's just learning to let go, just trust the process, and really understand the vision of the artist and just be artist first. I'll probably get fired for saying this, but dude, fuck record sales. Let's give fans a life-changing experience. That's what we're here to do. We came to work in music because we love this shit, and this is stuff that we would do for free for any of our friends' bands. I could be in the Philippines harvesting rice for $1 a day, but instead we get to work on music every day. It's a fucking blessing. So whatever we can do to give fans that life-changing experience and reach newer fans that feel closer to the artist, that's all that matters to me.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much to our panelists for your time and for your insights today, and thank you all of you for being here. You can let's see, are there any announcements you'd like to make about lunch or anything happening next?
We do. Thank you so much, Jen, to all of our panelists. Come meet us in the Sony Square. Our in-person folks, we have lunch over there. We're going to flip the room and we'll go into our next session. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.